This chat is D. Hi, D.
Hi.
Hey D, hey D.
Hey.
Hey, D.
Hey, Dee, I'm looking forward to talking to you later.
Yes, yes. We're the two Floridians
Yeah.
that are
You
not freezing our butts
All
off.
right.
Paula?
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
All right. I want to
Hey,
welcome
Chad.
everybody who's tuning in right
Hey, what's
now
going on?
to episode 6 of Grief. Let's talk about it. And today is a great topic. We're going to be talking about the effects of suicide and how to hold space with someone that's struggling. And today we have a great panel. So I want to take a couple seconds and let everybody introduce themselves. You want to go, Cindy?
Okay. I'm Cindy Ray Cooley. I'm a grief recovery method specialist. I specialize in addiction loss for the families. I'm also a controlled substance recovery coach. And again, working with families. I'm also the author of Swallowing a Bitter Pill, How Prescription and Over-the-Counter Drug Abuse is Ruining Lives. That also includes my story in it as well. I'm a lobbyist for the Opiate Task Force here in Florida, working with Governor DeSantis. And also part-time, I work with Easter Seals with adults with disabilities, and I love it.
D?
Yes, D. Here in North Central Florida, where it's still freezing cold. I'm a certified grief, life, and mental health coach. And although I did get my training the same way Cindy got hers on the grief recovery, um, and I'm just spending more time trying to work on my book, as well as trying to get workshops and getting the conference ready and stuff like that.
All right. Jenny?
I'm Jenny Diltz, and I help people convert grief into growth in their own way and in their own time, without judgment, expectation, despair. Yeah, I like grief.
All right. Chad, good to see you, brother.
All right, good to be here. Hello, good evening, and namaste to everybody. My name is Chad Nails. I'm a certified life and relationship coach out of New Jersey. I also specialize in psychoanalysis, neurolinguistic programming, and cognitive behavioral therapy. I also have specializations in PTSD and grief counseling.
All right. Ms. Baltazar. Turn up your mic.
I think she's on mute.
Are you on mute?
No, we can't.
No.
We still.
You still can't hear you. All right. We'll go to Dave and come back to you. Dave?
Thanks, Tony. My name is Dave Roberts. I'm an adjunct professor of psychology and psychology child life at Utica University in Utica, New York. I'm an author. I'm a retired addictions counselor. I'm a bereavement specialist or bereavement support person who is no stranger to loss. I've experienced loss since I've been 5 years old, including the death of a child, my daughter Janine, who transitioned on March 1st, 2003 as a result of rare form and aggressive form of cancer. And young adults, working with young adults, grief is my passion, and teaching is my passion now. So I embrace any opportunity I can to do that. So, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Apostle Nadia. They keep freezing up.
I think she's frozen. Oh, there she goes.
From the beautiful, of course, the the word apostle says it all. I'm a minister of religion, and tonight I am representing, as it were, Widows Inc. of Trinidad and Tobago, of which I'm the founder. I'm also author of a book called After the Death, A Widow's Love Touch. That's it.
All right. Dee, Anaya.
I am Dee Anaya, founder of Adventures of Grief Girl. We are a podcasting kind of
Are
trio.
we still
We have
here? Okay.
what's that? I'm an interdisciplinary artist, so I'm a grief coach and a death doula, so I help people use pleasure and play in their grief practices as a means of healing.
All right. Nancy, welcome to the show, Nancy.
Hi, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Even though it's not a happy subject, I'm happy that we're talking about it. That's half the battle. I'm a loss and grief, transformational grief expert. I have come to that through my own personal journeys. Like Dave, I've had lots of losses since I was young, both human and pet. And I am also a licensed clinical social worker and a certified life coach. And I combine all that in my work. And I subspecialize in pet loss and grief. And I'm coming out with a book, hopefully soon, the next 4 months or so, called I Miss You Already, Bearing the Unbearable Loss of Your Pet. It's oriented towards the anticipatory grief stage. That's where your pet is with you before, and you're grieving that experience. And it's a very important stage of grief, I believe. It's where so much healing can take place. So that's my specialty and sort of my passion, born out of really my own journey with my 2 service dogs who I had to let go of within 9 months of each other.
Jenny?
Is that my bell?
I don't know where the bell came from. How's your audio, Jenny?
We still can't hear you.
We still can't hear you. All right. Well, while she's figuring that out, who wants to start off the conversation tonight? Is a very deep conversation. It's a great conversation to have, especially with the loss of another television icon, Twitch. My condolences goes out to his family and his friends and those who have known him. And so,
That's what I'm saying with other people.
I think someone's got
with the, and especially with the day's age, we losing a lot of teens to suicide. We're losing a lot of men to suicide, and it just seems like an ongoing thing. So, really looking forward to this conversation. Anybody want to start it off? Okay. Well, let's talk about because we often see the effects of suicide after someone commits the act of suicide. Let's talk about some of the effects of suicide that we've experienced ourselves, and then we'll take the conversation from there.
Common one is guilt. When a suicide is involved, always, but often, survivors of suicide loss experience guilt of, why didn't I do more? Why didn't I see it come? What else could I have done? How could I have stopped this from happening?
Yeah.
And sometimes there's nothing that we could have done.
Yeah. It was. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna, just to dovetail off of that, one of the things as practitioners that we need to be aware of is that because of the stigmatization that's associated with suicide, we need to be aware that the surviving family members and friends may feel more isolated than usual, even because of the stigma of suicide, because people may question, well, why didn't you see the signs sooner? Is there something? I've had even individuals tell me that they've been asked, did you do something to drive them towards it? Which is probably the worst thing you can ever say to anybody who has survived a suicide. So
Hmm.
because of that, I think we need to be able to make sure that we're creating a safe space. We're making sure that we're focusing on cause of death. We're creating a space where they can allow their story and their struggles with stigmatization, and just trying to wrap their head around the suicide to come forward and do it very non-judgmentally. Um, and I think the effects, I think, linger with the survivors for a long time, and particularly if we're not sensitive to that as practitioners or as just simply companions, we can do more harm than good.
All right.
I would
Mario.
love,
It's
I'd love,
my opinion.
Hey, don't cut each other off.
sorry.
Chad, go ahead.
I'd love to add another facet to that panel of the survivor as somebody who has survived an attempt. I don't know if anybody else up here is can share with that, but as somebody who has survived an attempt personally, that grief carries on. That grief carried on to me after the attempt. It was just like, oh, I can't even do can't even do this right. And that lends toward a facet of utility that comes with people. I'm sure the survivors, the survivors of people who have actually transitioned through it are looking at it like, what else could I have done? But as somebody who, went to bed thinking that he wasn't going to come out on the other side and then came out on the other side, there is a profound level of grief and guilt that comes with that as well, and anger. So even to as we deal with people who have gone through the process of losing a loved one, and if we happen to cross paths with somebody who has attempted and it just didn't go right, having that same level of compassion and having that same level as Dave was saying, a soft-handed, I guess, something of a soft-handed approach to that as well is necessary.
What, Chad?
Yes.
I think that's, I'm really grateful that you shared your own experience in that vein, because that really does bring out the opportunity for people who are the survivors, not the people who attempted, but the people who survived. What would you say to them in terms of how they can support you, and specifically, like with some language, what would have helped you perhaps if you didn't receive that kind of support that your suicide attempt failed?
Funny enough, I just put a very, very simple post on Facebook the other day, and it simply said, "You're needed and you're
Wow.
wanted.
Yeah.
You're needed and you're wanted. That's all."
Wow.
And I'll speak to how that goes into the bigger issue of dealing with suicide or looking to support somebody there. That's a very major part of it.
Mhm.
Somebody asked a question in the comments. Mario, thank you for tuning in, brother. And his question was, how did I miss the signs? Because there are signs that people do show, and I don't think that we do pay enough attention to them. Such signs as starting to give away personal things, and sometimes people are just good at hiding it. I know when I tried to take my life, when I planned out my suicide, I hid it from everyone.
Mhm.
And I was able to keep on a straight face. I was able to, smile and still joke around with people and things like that. So no one really knew. And for like 2.5 months, my whole thought is to move people around so I can have time to do it. And that's how deep it can go. But what are some of the other signs that you guys have noticed, or even have it have shown yourself that no one
I
paid attention
I think this question really speaks a lot to anticipatory grief, the whole subject of anticipatory grief, because when people are confronted with someone who is depressed, maybe even talking, sharing some suicidal thoughts, if people don't know what to say or what to do, they often withdraw, which is the opposite of what needs to happen. But I find, even with someone I was working with recently, had a neighbor whose son suicided, and the son was the same age as her son. They grew up kind of together, but were no longer friends. And one of the signs of the son that suicided was he stopped taking his medication for depression. He didn't want to continue the meds. And when I talked to her about her own son, he had just done the same thing, decided he didn't want to do meds. And, I tried to talk to her about, what she can do actively to help support him and find out more information, even just some gentle questions. She froze. She didn't want to go there.
When I was dealing with my bipolar back in the day, I was on a lot of medication. And I found that I had a lot more suicide ideations on the medication than I did when I took myself off the medication and had, once I changed my mindset and everything, I don't feel, even after my son died, I did not feel the need to die. I did not feel that, not the loneliness, not the heartbreak, not anything. For some reason, I found my purpose. So maybe I could be wrong, and I know Tony's going to correct me on this. And it could be with some people, I guess maybe with some people, the medication is right for them, while there are some people that maybe it's not, But I do think that the change in the mindset could be helpful as well. The medication, while it may work for one, may not work for another. When I was on it, it did me more damage than it did when I wasn't on it, if that makes any sense.
It does. It can go either which way. For some people, the medication does work. It helps keep them balanced mentally. Now, do I look at it as a long-term solution? No. I believe those things come from sitting down, talking with people, talking about the things that are going on with you. How did you get here? Which is a huge thing. That was a huge question. After I lost a couple
I
of my
just
friends.
wanted to.
Go ahead.
I don't know who said that.
Many. But that was a huge thing. Was how did they get there, right? And coming from someone who has gotten there, I can only speak from my position. I lost. I don't know. I was tired. You
Yes.
ever just been so tired of just being
wanted
tired?
to,
I don't know who's saying that or who's doing that.
That's Nadia. She's breaking
Yes,
up and going out.
Cindy, but I do understand what you're saying, because grief can mentally, emotionally, and everything exhaust you.
Right.
But I didn't find that.
But everyone's like, everyone's different. Sometimes you have to go through the motions in order to come out the other side. Suicide is one of those things that some people never know until it happens, and there's a sense of the fear is not there, the fear of dying, the fear of actually taking your life. Because I don't know if you've been raised in the church, you get told, for the longest time that suicide is a sin, is one of those things. But what happens when that thought is gone? Like you just don't care about that, or maybe you're wrong, right? Because those things do go in, and that's the mind of an individual. Like, how dark can you go in that rabbit hole? How deep are you willing to go down there? And the question is, well, the answer is very deep, very deep. I've seen someone mention something about children earlier, and children, will react to things a little bit different. What was it, a couple months ago? A young lady took her life from being bullied at school, and she wrote her mother a letter, explaining that she was sorry, but she just didn't want to do it anymore. And I believe she was 14. So those telltale signs that most people think that are normal, they really aren't normal. You have to put yourself in a bad place. You have to be in a bad place.
Yeah. Can
To-
I haven't thought about that, but most of us are in tune to look for the obvious signs of somebody that's contemplating suicide, like depression is obviously a big one. Changes in behavior.
Yep.
But people aren't in tune to look for the less obvious suicidal warning signs, such as the other differences in behavior. Maybe you're around somebody that usually is angry all the time, and all of a sudden their behavior changes to being calm, to being in a good mood. That is a change in the behavior. Somebody that's totally different from what you're expected. Somebody that's totally angry to all of a sudden being calm. The other one is a change of sleeping patterns. Someone that is sleeping all day or walking around like they have that cloud over their head all day. And like Tony says, we're very good. Those of us that have been in recovery before, we're very good at hiding our feelings. We're very good at manipulating other people to think the way that we want them to feel like you are. I was very good. I was a pill addict with prescription drugs for over 20 years. I was slowly going into a suicide pattern, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I hid everything. I was a functional pill addict for many years. And it wasn't until my body started to give out that I went into treatment for it. But it's also the physical side of pain that sometimes people don't see, they overlook it. For me, I would come up with reasons to go to the doctors to get those pills that I wanted. So it's those changes in the behaviors. It's not just, oh, she's depressed, let's keep an eye out for her. Look out for those signs. If someone says, I just went out and bought a gun, that's a sign. If somebody is pill stalking, that's a sign.
Yep.
I probably had 30 different types of medications in my cabinet, and taking about 20 of them a day, and still didn't think anything was wrong because I didn't give a damn. I'm now in recovery for 25 years, and that's why I'm in the genre that I'm in. But look for the signs that are not necessarily the usual signs of someone you suspect is thinking about suicide.
Tony, if I could dovetail off of what Cindy had said, if everybody's okay with that.
Yeah,
One of the things that she had mentioned about changes in behavior, when I used to work in the addictions field, if there were changes in behavior, if somebody went from being very morose, depressed, low energetic to high energy, I would immediately jump on that, because my thought was that they had made up their mind that they were going to complete suicide. They had made up their mind, and they had come to peace with that. because of the because of that change in behavior. Other things, if we look at history, if there's a history of mental illness, particularly mental illness is positively correlated with suicide attempt. I think of schizophrenia, maybe bipolar disorder. I think borderline personality disorder, there's also a very high correlation with that. I think, but there are also some not so obvious signs. One is an individual asking questions about, or taking more of a sudden interest in religion, or maybe asking more questions about the afterlife. There was one parent that I had run into whose son died by suicide at the age of 17. And there were no other telltale signs other than the fact that his grandfather, who was very close with him, died a year before he completed the act. And he was asking questions about, do you think Grandpa's in heaven? Will I ever see him again? And I think, he hid every other symptom very well. And just one day, I think he just decided he wanted to be with his grandfather, and he hung himself in the attic of his home, and his mother found him, which created another layer of trauma. As professionals, sometimes we may miss something that's very subtle.
Yes.
But that's the other part. A preoccupation with religion or asking questions about what happens after death may be another telltale sign that we may need to do some exploration. And if they talk about it, forget the myth that if they talk about it that they're seeking for attention. If they're talking about it, they're going to attempt. Because people who do talk about attempting suicide will end up going with the act. We need to also err on the side of caution with that and be aware that it could happen.
I think you bring up another good point, Dave, and that is that people who have experienced loss, like the loss of a pet, or other losses, often trigger the suicide, ideation and the hopelessness, especially depending on the role of the person or animal that they lost, what that represented. I think, like you say, Cindy, that kind of one of maybe the less obvious signs that people don't think of, the potential of somebody losing, experiencing a loss that might drive them, down that rabbit hole. But
Yeah, and I think before I forget this thought, that's the other piece, is we need to look at loss history. Has there been losses within a year that person has come into treatment or has come to you for help? What have been the other series of losses that they had in the previous year? They may have had 3 or 4 very traumatic losses within a 2 to 5 year period that they're having trouble processing. That can be overwhelming for a person to just say, I'm ready to check out. I just can't deal with the pain. So I think that's the other thing to take a look at is loss history. And I'm done for now.
What I hear a lot is parents who've lost children. Tony, Dee probably knows what I mean. When you lost a child, they'll run into fathers and mothers who become very suicidal. It's like unless you've lost a child, it's a pain you just cannot believe that it's unbearable. And there is some people who honestly believe the only way they can have that connection with their child, the child they just lost, the only way they can be in heaven with their child at that moment is to commit suicide. And it takes a lot of courage and bravery to figure out how to take them down so they know that that's not the answer,
Very true.
Well, I think that's where, education, grief education, and destigmatizing, the shame around suicide is so important. I think that's one very significant factor in why we are even having this call, is that there's just not enough. People just don't understand all of this and know what supports there are. They don't even sometimes know the first step in getting support.
True.
That's why this forum on this particular topic
Well,
is so
People seem
Yeah.
to come in and out.
Okay, try not to cut each other off.
Well, I was just saying, because the topic is such a serious topic,
What
that
you mean?
even when we started this session, and Tony says, who wants to start? None of us spoke up because it's a topic that families have a hard time even asking, how are you? They're afraid of what that answer is going to be. And then what do I do after that? Which is why I'm so glad to hear that Dee and I teach the method, because it's an action activity program that we teach. So it's not just words, it's actually participating in that recovery process. Is that correct, Dee?
Yeah, that training was a very intense training, just like the mental health coach one was. Oh, it got to my soul. It was very intense, but I tell you what, it helped me mentally to deal with my father before he died. So, you know,
We have a comment in here that actually let's dive into it. Peggy, she wrote, many of the so-called signs are identical to signs of depression and mood swings. Knowing when suicide is imminent is much more impulsive in a matter of minutes. I agree in so
Yeah.
many ways, because we become masters of disguise, and sometimes those are combinations that do play a factor in there. Deep depression, PTSD, mood swings, things like that, which Dave mentioned earlier. But there's more to it as well. It's never the thought of how this is going to affect someone else, right? Suicide in a lot of ways. I know I made the excuse that it was the best thing in the world for me, right? It was the last thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm done. I'm done fighting. I'm done all of this, right? I'm totally giving up. And on the other side was, who would care, right? So I convinced myself that no one would care if I did it. Like, I'm alone. So why would it really matter if I did it, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm looking at a short-term solution for problems that I now realize that if I took the time to think about it and work through them, there was, you know what I'm saying, I can grow from it. We don't ever think about the split second of, I don't want to grow from it. So I think that's important to realize as well.
Mhm.
I think that's an excellent point, Tony. Looking at that comment, it made me think about a training that I had gone through where they speak about the 4Ds, which is depression, despair, despondency, and then the downward spiral. A lot of people who are around people who are dealing with this don't know exactly what those signs are, or even in the case of the 4 phases that I just spoke about, what each of those looks like. The depression, which is, people just having that loss of energy and that loss of vigor, and then the despair where they're feeling like, oh, well, it's, the woe was me phase, the all is lost phase, and then the despondency where they begin to pull away, and then the downward spiral where they're actually going into the process of an ideation or even an attempt, and having those skills. What Dee and Cindy were saying about having those specific trainings to acquire those skills, and then using those skills to cultivate an environment where those telltale signs are more readily seen, and then also being able to use those skills to create an environment that the person may feel more likely to say something when we do ask that very powerful question, how are you? A lot of people are really trained to be like, I'm okay. And there are a lot of different factors that go into why people go in, automatically go to that phrase. Some people are already feeling like people don't care. Some people are already feeling like, you may care, but you don't know how to address it. Some people are already thinking, what does it even matter in the long run? So having that in place and going beyond the how are you, for a lot of people, I ask them, I don't even go to say how are you. I'm like, how are you feeling today?
Yeah.
It goes a little deeper, or tell me more about what's going on with you today. How was your day? What were the highlights? What were the lowlights? And people, some people, they look at me and it's like, why are you all in my business? And I was like, because I care.
Yeah.
And
I think that's a really good point about more open-ended questions that indicate that you're interested. You're not just asking the cursory, how are you, which everybody does, whether you know people or not, like in the grocery store or whatever. I just want to highlight that because it seems like such a small thing, but it's really, I think, a very impactful way to interact with somebody who's fragile.
Oh, and I think the other thing too is when you ask open-ended questions, you allow a person's story to evolve, and everybody has a story. And
That's right.
the tragedy is that there's a lot of stories that go untold because there aren't people that are willing to witness some of the deepest pain and intimate moments that we're going to have. The other thing, just to dovetail off of what Chad said, with depression, the other thing we have to be aware of too with depression is sometimes depression can come out not only as sadness, but as irritability or anger, particularly if you take a look at gender specific differences. For many men, depression is manifested as irritability, and anger for women, it's sadness. Now, I'm not saying that's in all cases, but we have to take a look at that depression can manifest itself differently, depending on a lot of different things. So we also have to take a look at that as well too, and especially when we're contemplating, talking to an individual who may have suicidal ideation or a plan, to take a look at those specific behaviors as well.
I like that. But
And also-
dovetail. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, to dovetail off of Dave, the differences between men and women, when it comes down to it, men, well, first and foremost, men are more aggressive in it, right? And then in a lot of ways, men feel as if we can't afford the luxury of being depressed because we have so many other things that are weighing on our shoulders, and the first sign of, someone seeing us depressed, we clam up, we push off, I love that term, I'm saying, I'm okay, because now that I've been there, I've heard it several times, I now hear the deeper meaning behind it. Yeah, you okay? I'm okay too. But let's sit down. Let's just talk. I want to know how you're actually doing. I had a young man not too long ago. I asked that simple question: how are you doing? And he turned around, he understood what I was saying, and he broke down and started crying. And from that point, it was just a matter of holding space with him while he expressed himself openly, without judgment. And at the end of the conversation, we both felt good walking away from it because he got my number. He now calls and he lets me know what's going on with him. And a lot of times, that's all it takes, is just that simple understanding from those simple words. Understanding the deeper meaning behind it, because you can actually look at a person from time to time and tell that they're struggling.
I think too, I was going to hop in earlier, but my mic was off. It's people who aren't doing this work. It's not being dismissive of what you're hearing. Not downplaying what you're hearing. I feel like we see these patterns in people a lot. We see them stop, entertaining. You see them retreat from, they're isolating. We see those little signs and we downplay it. Oh, they're just busy. Oh, they're just, we have this running commentary about what somebody else is going through. And then, we just go on with our lives and we never check back in. Or, particularly if you're in a family with somebody who's struggling, who's bereaved, who, what they've gone through, as you were saying, like the trauma history, if you know what this person has gone through, chances are really good that showing up and showing that you care and not dismissing anything that they're going through is going to be helpful. It's going to turn the tide a little bit and saying, you know what, I hear you. I'm here for you. And I see what you're going through. I see that this is hard.
That is a huge point, Nehemiah. That is absolutely huge point, and that speaks to what I know. We're going to get into the support part, also, but what you just said speaks volumes into the general atmosphere that we have around each other right now, which is like, everything's tight. Everything's tight. I'm feeling some type of way. Well, I'm feeling some type of way too. So, and we can do that really easily.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the write-off, or if somebody plays, if somebody does start to go into how they're really feeling, or how they're feeling, how they're feeling down, how they're feeling beat down, or stretched out, or feeling useless, this, that, and third, we'll go into oppression Olympics.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh, you think you have it bad. You all of y'all have heard this. Somebody starts to go into it, and then you'll hear somebody shout, oh, you think you have it bad? I had to do this, and so on and so forth. And the space is lost as soon as you do that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's going to, so that person will not want to share with you or share at all, in the worst case scenario. So for us, especially for those of us who have chosen to go into this field and to breach these subjects, that has to be mitigated, if not eliminated. And if you expect to hold space for somebody, the space has to be kind of pure, which means there's very little room for you to pour yourself into that if somebody's coming to you saying, this is how I'm feeling, or this is the way that I think I'm going. Unless it is there is some way that you can relate to them, that you can use your personal experience to relate to them in that area, it's tough.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what I was getting at as well, is if you're asking somebody, how are you doing, or are you okay? Look them in the eye and be prepared to listen with your heart. Less with the ears, but listen with your heart. And don't venture off and look around in the room while they're trying to tell you the story, because then you're not listening to me. Mm-hmm. And I just think we're in this day and age of nobody eats dinner together. Nobody does things together anymore. Mm-hmm. So now you've got somebody that just passed away. When are you talking to this person or the teenager or child about somebody that died? And explain it to them. You explain to them about drug addiction, how bad that is, sitting down with the kids, and this is what your do's and don'ts are. Mm-hmm. But share about what grief is, what about the emotions that go along with that. Ask them for their opinion, ask for their view, and share that love back and forth. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to cry about it. But be there for them and take the time with the child or the adult or your best friend, whoever it is, but be there. Even if they just want to be held, even if they just want to sit in the room with you, just be there. And don't say, oh, you're okay. All right, I'll talk to you later. Right. They've got more to say.
Can you hear me now?
Well, I remember I'd like to come in here because I've been listening and I've been writing down, because I'm getting a lot of new information. When I started off, I said that I came from the beautiful island of Trinidad and Tobago, but I didn't say we have a lot of connection problems, as you all saw. But I remember when my husband died, and I went to my sister-in-law and I told her that, Lizzie and I feeling alone and, that kind of thing. And, she said to me, you have to trust God. And I was like, what is this nonsense about? I don't want to hear about trust God, I wanted to hear from her that, she's coming to visit or something like that. And I'm speaking, and at that point, I was a Christian and a minister, a preacher and a minister of the gospel. And what I find is that, especially in this grief space, that we as ministers of the gospel, yes, I am all for God, the highest good, but there's a time and a season for everything under the sun. And we ought not to hide with platitudes about things like trusting God and my husband has gone into the flower garden of God and all type of foolishness. That's the first thing. And because of that, and because other people, that after that my husband died, people came for a week and then I didn't see them again. And they made all sorts of promises and so on. But I'm not bitter about that. I'm just relating the story. I started to feel suicidal. And one day I was lying down with my daughter, and let me explain how it went. I was lying down with my daughter and I just felt like, depression feels like a black cloud. And this black cloud just came over and, I started to think about how to kill her and how to kill me. I started off with, well, I'm gonna kill her, stab her, and then stab me. But then I said, suppose when I stab her, she will start screaming and, if she doesn't die, I guess the police will hold me up. Am I speaking too fast and you all are not understanding? Or are you all understanding?
No, you're good. You're good.
Is that a yes? Or what?
Yes.
What? Okay. So eventually I moved after that idea, and then I decided to we could die by gas. And we were in the bedroom upstairs. So my little death plan was to go downstairs, turn on the gas, and then run back upstairs and lie down. Now, in hindsight, that was the dumbest death plan under the sun, because how is the gas going to go from, we have these little tanks in Trinidad and Tobago, going to go from upstairs to downstairs. So to dovetail on what Chad was saying, I had a good laugh after that, because I'm glad that I really didn't have, a real solid plan. And at the end of the day, I came to the conclusion, I talked to myself and I said, Nadia, this is it, your husband is gone and you have to face up with life, with your daughter and with my daughter. And that was the end of, the plans for suicide. But what I want to take home, what I want to leave practitioners and people dealing with grief, people, that kind of thing, is that keep the platitudes. All this talk about trust God and this and that, there has a place for that. But sometimes people just want a hug, they want a kind word, they want you to come and spend some moments of silence with them. Mm-hmm. That's my contribution.
May I jump in, Tony?
Yeah, of course.
Since everyone can hear me now, yes?
Yes.
So I just a couple of reflections, things that are resonating with me around signs and symptoms that people shared, and just some one of the things that comes up for me is around when people are struggling with depression, substance abuse, things of that nature, and then there's a need to either they are able to rehab and no longer are involved in that any longer, or they're still struggling, but they know that it's not acceptable for them to kind of have these these addiction issues and things. And so they try to adapt to an environment so that that shift of either no longer using, they don't have what they need. I mean, it doesn't even need to be like drugs and alcohol. I see this with like people who exercise and they've stopped exercising because they just don't have the energy anymore, and exercise really kept them going. It could be something as simple as like the big shifts that people were talking about, but also that we often encourage them to, especially with the negative things like the substance abuse, to not be drinking, not be smoking, not be all these things, which is important, of course. But when they don't have that, there needs to be a replacement. So, and I feel like there's a lot of like people doing their best to try to get off of stuff like that. And I know how difficult that process can be. And then when they don't have the support network after, so then they're in this place of struggle and they don't have the support system or a new coping, right? A new way to cope. And then that can lead to feelings of hopelessness. And what do I do now? I don't have my, my drinks or things that were helping me in the past. The other thing that I think like everyone kind of said, so I guess it's not that we don't encourage people certainly to restore themselves and to care for themselves in that way, but I just think it's worth like mentioning that to honor that and give support around that space between recovery and depression, like because there's a deeper reason, right? Of course, that people often go into those kinds of abuse behaviors. So do they have support in between world of like reintegrating without that substance? And the other piece that I'm thinking about is is really what everyone's kind of I'm just reflecting is about this kind of like building an emotional language that, I think as a world community is really important for us to begin to open up more conversations. Chad, Diana, you also said some things about, when we just sitting with people, Cindy as well, like, right, dinner time together, the things that we often don't do now. And if someone is struggling or even if they're not, and you're just asking them how their day was, like really giving sacred space to the people in our life around and giving them that presence of digging deeper and making it acceptable, men and women, to talk about their emotions. I think that especially for men, it's very difficult. So that simple thing of like inviting conversation and helping teaching kids, how to identify when they're feeling a certain way and recognizing that, and just saying like, I'm here, I'm always here. I care about you. Maybe you don't want to talk about it now, but I'm here for you when you're ready to be, or just being with them in that space. So the presence is, I know we're going to shift into that conversation. So thank you.
Yeah. And I think that, well, sorry, Tony. I think the dovetail off of what Jenny said, Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun came up with a framework for sitting with bereaved individuals called expert companionship, which dovetails off of what Jenny said, is just simply throwing out clinical expertise and just creating a space where you could let one person's story unfold and bear witness to the worst possible experience in their lives, and you communicate with them for the long haul, the short haul, until and you're going to be there to help them try to come to some type of resolution, in terms of learning to live in a world that's going to be permanently different because of what's happened. And the other piece in terms of this is that if a person is coming to you and they're telling you, I'm thinking of killing myself, they're looking for a reason not to do that. I think they want you to talk them out of it. They want you to try to help them see that there is a reason for them to go on, at least if it's just for another day. You are their last stop in terms of preventing them from doing that act. And one of the things I always have asked individuals is, who do you think would be would miss you if you killed if you killed yourself? Who would feel the pain? And somebody said, well, I don't know if anybody would. I'd say, well, I'll tell you, there's going to be at least one person that's going to feel that pain. That's going to be me. And I've said that to some of my students who have thought of have entertained that at times. And I said, look, if you decide to attempt suicide or die by suicide, understand something. Your void's going to be felt by me, and I will miss you terribly. I said, so there's going to be at least one person that's going to grieve for your loss very, very deeply. So if we can at least give them some hope to delay the attempt, to delay the decision, that's, I think, what we can do. And we take that, so, and we take every verbalization of a suicide threat very seriously. We don't blow it off. We look at it as anybody that verbalizes it, we can take that seriously.
Dave, I would also add to that they may state it in a very vague way, something, not so much that, I'm thinking of dying. It could be, I can't do this anymore. Yep. Something that is really, vague, and we might not latch on to that because it feels like something we could say in our daily life. We say a lot of these things, like, I feel like I want to die. And like people are like, oh, that's, that makes me feel whatever. We kind of use these phrases off the cuff a lot. So when someone actually verbalizes that, and it can come off as that way. And so we have to also kind of be in tune with, who we're talking to and what the situation is, and aware that it may be something deeper than that, and take it seriously.
Yeah. I know when I talk to some men, I look at their energy, right? And I can pretty much put together their personality. How can I talk to this individual? You can't approach everybody the same, because everybody's going to react so differently. So sometimes I have to tell men, look, you're pretty messed up right now. You're pretty messed up. So I bring that reality to the forefront. That way it puts them in a position to where we can have the conversation without having to dance around, the excuses or anything like that. No, I make it very well known. Hey, I see you. And right now you're not in a good place. Yeah. So from that point on, I need to be able to hold space with you, let you carry me where you need to go. And so I can help give you some of the tools that I've developed or other people have developed over time, a multitude of them, just so you have an option of what you can use in those different moments and things like that. So the approach really has to be, you have to read your individual, very diverse in your approach when you're talking to people about how they're feeling about suicide, and that comes from, I wish somebody would have did it to me. Like, hey, I see you. You're not in a good place right now. But instead, I'm always, the strong people are the ones that no one ever checks up on. The strong ones are the ones that, no one ever checks up on. They often assume that we have our shit together, and we don't. Right. And so therefore a lot of people like myself, I played off of that. So, well, since you think that I'm strong, I don't have to tell you anything that's going on with me. In other words, why would you care anyway? You only hear dump your crap off on me, and then you're going to leave. So not only am I dealing with the things that I'm dealing with, but I'm also taking in yours as well.
Yeah.
And then when you leave, I'm left with all of this thing that's going. So yeah, that can play a huge part on it. Check on your strong friends, those ones that you constantly on. Yes, check on them, because we're human beings. I know a lot of people like to think, as us sitting on this panel, we've been there, we've walked that walk, but we often get into that place as well, right? There's a reason why we are who we are. Yeah. So check on your strong friends. Sometimes understanding that some of your friends need to be told, hey, I see you. You're not doing okay right now. And until we are in a good part, in a good place, I am not leaving your side. If you want, you can call the police. You can do whatever you want, and the police will come here and sit with me. You know, so I am that guy, right? But you know, the seriousness of it is that most people feel as if we're not being seen, we're not being heard. You know, we don't. People just don't know how to talk, or we clam up, we back away from it. Oh, I see what he's doing, but you know, I don't want to. I don't want to press because we often think when we press, we feel that we're going to push that person further into that thought. Right. So
I think that's a very important myth, I think, that needs to be dispelled. Several of them have
yes.
come out, and one is that people are just looking for attention. Suicidal people that talk about it are just looking for attention, and so I'm not going to give them that attention. Or they think if I give them that attention and take it seriously, I'm going to push them, like you just said, I'm going to push them further into that ideation, both of which are so not true. And I think, you know, as you were talking, Tony, I was thinking, and a lot of what I think many of you have been saying here is that there is a sense of hopelessness. There's a sense of not being seen, and there's a sense of hopelessness. And I was trying to think, you know, what would be some good language about that? Like, what about just asking, do you feel hopeless? Simple sentence, simple question, but big. Because you're getting really very quickly right to, I think, what tips people down that rabbit hole is there's no options, there's no hope, nobody's going to care.
Major. That is so major.
Yeah.
And to respect to our veterans out there, the 22 and day, you know, it's a huge thing. And for our veterans out there, please, you know, if you're struggling right now, reach out to your local VA, reach out to a friend, get some help. You know, because we're tired of losing people. I know I am. I know we're constantly looking in the news. We're seeing teenagers, all of these different things. So I want to get into something, you know, the support aspect of it, holding space with someone that's struggling. Who wants to start off that one?
I can.
Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead, Dave.
I know we've kind of alluded to that in terms of how to do that on an individual basis by creating a safe and structured space and being a companion. I want to take a different tack as far as my role as an adjunct professor. I have a lot of students who have dealt with depression, anxiety. Much of the times it's unreported depression and anxiety. I tell my students, I said, for 50 or the 75 minutes that you're with me, I try to create a safe, as comfortable, and as fun as an atmosphere, yet structured, so that you can do your work and have a respite for whatever else may be ailing you, besides just the day-to-day struggles of keeping up with your requirements as a student. I tell them I don't know your history. So if I can create a space for you where there's that kind of a respite, where you can feel less anxious, feel more relaxed, that to me becomes a proactive measure to at least give individuals a respite from whatever stress that they're feeling or hopelessness that they're feeling. So I think the importance of creating that, not only in an individual setting, but in a group setting, I think is really, really major. And I think what you're going to find happening is that individuals, if you can create that in a group setting, whether it be in therapy, whether it be in a classroom, individuals will come and talk to you because they feel safe doing that. And for an individual to talk to you about feeling out of sorts, feeling hopeless, or even suicidal, they need to be able to feel safe to do that. And we need to create that atmosphere in the individual setting, in the group setting as well too, whether it's in the classroom or therapy setting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with both what Dave just said and with what Nancy was saying earlier, and as far as Dave's part is as far as setting the environment, and Nancy's part as far as going with the deeper thing. It's my personal and professional experience with this has been people get there when there is a lack of there's a lack of utility, when they don't feel useful, when they don't feel heard or seen or needed, or heard, seen, needed, or wanted. And Um, and then with an additional one of sometimes just being tired of the routine, because it doesn't, because for their mindset it doesn't yield anything fruitful for them. Like that they just feel like they have to do it. They feel like they have to do it, and I know that was a big part of mine because I felt like I had to operate in a manner that I was told, I had to operate, as far as operating according to my design, and that was a major thing. That was a slow burn, and then there were other aspects that were faster burns, like being told you're ruining somebody's life, or being told, you're not operating, up to spec, or being told, why aren't you more like this person or that person, or anything, any of those other things. So it is a stripping down of self. It is stripping away of self that happens, and it's an acute thing. It's not just this. It's not this wide angle occurrence. It's very acute to the person because everybody has their different. Anybody can get there. Because there are appropriate triggers for everybody to get there. If it's not the why aren't you like this, then it's the you're not feeling heard, or you're not feeling wanted, or you're not feeling seen, or you're not feeling useful. The big one for me was not feeling useful. I didn't feel like I was a good son. I didn't feel like I was a good father. I didn't feel like I was a good husband. So then the natural course was, why am I here then? What's the point of staying?
Chad, did you experience shame around that? Was that another factor?
Yeah. Even being able to say that, because you're not, depending on how you're raised, you're not supposed to think that.
Right.
So me being raised in a moderately religious household, of course that gets, that stuff gets spoken on, and so even that notion of thinking that way or having those thoughts can absolutely add fuel to the fire, per se, where it's just like, I'm feeling this way. Oh my God, I'm feeling this way. And so that's adding to the fact that I'm feeling this way. And it's just, it can be, once you get started, it can be hard to stop. It can be hard to stop unless you develop some measure of will, or you have somebody who stands in the gap, per se, for you to be able to fight that, to be able to, like Dave was saying, establish the environment, or like you were saying, Nancy, going harder into the pathos of that, to kind of stop that snowball from rolling.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's probably, I don't know that much about teen suicides, but my guess is that shame at shamed by maybe parents, siblings, bullying, all of that contributes heavily to someone young who doesn't have the skills, who doesn't have the bigger picture to, understand how to even navigate that shame.
I've dealt with a couple of teens, and you're absolutely right, because, if we know anything about childhood development, that is a major source of them trying to figure out their identity. And if you go into,
yes,
if you leave a teenager alone, and I'm not going to say it's for every single case, but you leave a teenager alone, and they're sitting there and they're trying to establish themselves. They're in the beginning phases of establishing themselves as far as an identity, and establishing their likes, their wants, their virtues, their vices, and so on and so forth. You introduce an element of, if you introduce a crucial enough element of them feeling like what they're doing is off or wrong or this, that, and third, and you don't follow it up with, it might be wrong, and it might legitimately be wrong, but if you don't follow that up with a supportive structure of here's how we can get it right, they'll go nuclear on you. That identity phase will go critical. It will go critical mass easily, and that's why teenagers need so much guidance.
Yeah. I think you very well said, Chad. You kind of put into words what I was trying to say about kids. It's that identity, the formation of the identity, coupled with the disapproval or the criticism and even abuse.
Yes.
Yeah, really good. Well said.
Well,
the guidance definitely has to be coupled with support. It's like, yes, this is right, and here's why. Yes, it's wrong, and here's why.
And I think teens tend to feel feelings a lot more intensely than we do as we get into adulthood. So any type of a relationship breakup or any type of life catastrophe may tend to be awfulized more, or because they're still trying to, develop their decision-making capacity and they're still growing, it just can be really intensified, and that could cause them to do impulsive things as well, too.
And there's a lot of good programs out there. So anybody that's watching this program, it's finding a program and a person that you feel really comfortable with to share all of those things as well. But also making sure that you're not getting misdiagnosed with depression for suicide, or is it medication that you're on that's causing you to go into that slippery slope, if you know what I mean. Any of us that ever been on a medication that has made you feel really down, almost to the point of depression yourself, it's making sure that that person is being diagnosed, whether it's for a death of something or a divorce or any of the other 40 different types of losses that I teach in this program. Make sure that they're in that right program. And if it is medication addiction, then they need to get treatment for that as well. So make sure they're in that right program for you and that you're in that right program with that person. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And that is important. It's important to have the right sort of support that works for you, and sometimes that could take a little bit as well. So don't be afraid to take the time to figure out what works for you. But as someone who holds space with individuals, the biggest mistake I've seen people have when holding space is to start trading stories back and forth with them. And it's common. Some people just like to go, well, you're doing this, but I've done this as well, and this, that, and other, trying to minimize their experience, that what they're going through. So I often encourage people, like, when you go in there, just remember that nothing that you've ever gone through is about you. This is not about you, so your story has no place in what they're doing. Your job is to hold space with that individual and go through the motions with them, go through that time travel with them, because a lot of times you can figure out where their triggers are. And then once you figure it out, if you're really paying attention to them, you can start to write them down. And then you can start to go back to address, okay, what's going on with this? It's simple things, little simple things that you can start to work on to begin that healing process, but also to start to separate what's what. Is it the depression? Is it the PTSD? Is it a combination? Is it the medication? Things like that. So having that support with the right individuals are important. So please take your time to find that support that works for you as well.
And I think the best way we can establish a connection with somebody is by establishing ourselves as a listener instead of a talking person.
Yes.
That's how we can build that rapport.
Absolutely included. Just simply having those points where you're listening and the occasional, I can relate.
I do think that it's not an all or nothing about sharing or your own experience. I think there's a nice tightrope that you can walk where you can help them through your sharing a little bit of your own experience in the context of theirs, so that they understand you get it. You may not have the same experience, but it indicates that you get it. And I think that's really important for people to know, especially when they people who feel like they're not understood. And so
Yeah.
I think there's just like a little peppering of your
Yeah.
own,
I agree.
your own sharing.
It's in the wording. It's in
Yes.
the wording of how you do it, right?
Exactly.
You know, that's what I'm
And-
getting at, like instead of going, I see that you're doing this, but and going back and forth to that individual, trying to outdo each other. So
No.
there's a way to do it. There's
Yes.
a way to do it where you don't have to really implement yourself, but implement your experience
Yes.
Right.
within the conversation.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the rule of thumb is if counselor self-disclosure, therapist self-disclosure, if the self-disclosure is going to benefit the client, then it's good self-disclosure. If the
Right.
self-disclosure benefits the therapist, then that exchange becomes exploitive.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well said, Dave.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think one thing to remember anytime we're dealing with suicide is that each situation is different. Whether it's attempt, whether it's a death or suicide, like I was saying, each person is complex. Each story, each situation is so complex, and each individual is different. So there's not really a one size fits all, and that's one thing that's really hard about suicide is that often there are no answers. We can't ask the person who died any questions.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are no clues. Sometimes there are clues and they still die. Each one is so very unique.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important too that I had a client that we talked for about an hour, and then we both agreed that we weren't a good match together. And so I referred this individual to somebody else that had a stronger understanding. And it happened to have been a teenager because I don't work with that many teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually referred, and I think it's important to know your own weaknesses and strengths so that you can help that person find the right match for them,
Very true. Very true. None of us is a cure-all.
Yeah.
We're going to have, based off of our unique experiences, based off of our practices, based off of our trainings, we're going to be unique in a certain subset of the whole realm of mental health, or the whole realm of dealing with suicides, and being able to say that I can help you with A, B, C, D, but not with E, F, and G.
Right.
And it's important for people who have been affected by suicide, either in life through attempts or through death, to have a gauge of where they're at too. Because what support for one may absolutely be detrimental to another.
Mm-hmm.
Some people may want lots of resources to help them with a suicide or with the attempt. Some people can't even do anything. They it's so far out of their capacity, their resources, their mental functioning right now, their emotional state, that they're still just trying to process what happened. And so it's so important to meet people where they're at and ask them, what would support you right now? If it's laundry, I can come over and help you do your laundry. Or if it's bring a meal, or just coming to sit with you. Or maybe it's a page of resources that you can turn to.
Mm-hmm.
What feels good to you?
I think a lot of people don't necessarily know how to answer that question. I think it's a good question, but I find a lot of people don't know what they need. They just don't know how to answer that. So how do you help people get to the next step of that, Jenny? Because it sounds like you've done that.
I have in some situations, people have come to me With one, they wanted how to honor their loved one in a memorial service in a way that was uplifting after a suicide. For another, it was, I just need somebody to be with me.
I've encountered that a lot as
What you can do is offer a couple of options.
Mm-hmm.
Does this sound good to you, or would this be better for you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want silence? Do you want your space, or would a hug help you?
Mm-hmm.
And learn together with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right, Nancy, a lot of people may not know where to even start.
Yeah.
Because the world is shattered.
Yeah, but that's where we can help, is like you just described, starting to educate them about what is self-care, what is self-nurturing, what is self-love, how do you show that? And so you teach them by the very questions you ask.
Yep.
I actually had somebody that who had lost her husband, and was a very good friend of the family. She lost her husband, and she didn't need somebody to be there all day. She was good during the day, but she would feel some type of way going towards the evening. So what I would do is I'd stay over at night, and I'd help her cook dinner and talk, and then I kind of like quote unquote hush. And then I'd quote unquote, tuck her in at night, and then just to stay overnight, I just, stay there and watch TV and then go to sleep. And then in the morning I go home. And that provided her with the sense of comfort that she needed to springboard back into just like being back to normal. It doesn't have to be an everything, but what you can do or what you can provide can be everything to somebody, to allow them to just kind of like reset and get back into a sense of normalcy, which does include the realization that this person is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nancy, I was going to ask you, what do you do for pet loss when someone's grieving for the pet loss?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, I don't know that we have time to answer all that. Can you be a little more specific when you ask, what do I do? I help people.
Do you take them through certain steps? Do you help them stay with them, or,
So I work with people mostly who have already lost their pet, sometimes within the day. They contact me, or sometimes a week or months later. And then sometimes I get people who are facing the loss, and I help those people face it, have the courage and the support and the understanding of how to make that experience really healing instead of traumatic. So, and it's so common for people, that I see who's already lost their pet with such tremendous grief about and guilt and regret about how they failed their pet. They did it too soon. They did it too late. They didn't do it right. And that's where anticipatory grief work is so powerful, because it can really minimize the guilt and the regret that people often feel. But, I take them through, whatever stage of grief they're going through. And, a lot of what I do is really educating about what grief is, what the journey is, what is normal. So I get so many questions from clients like, is this normal? Like, I'm feeling this, like, can that really be normal? Well, yeah, it's very normal. And so that's kind of a short answer. I don't know did that answer?
Yeah. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks for asking.
Can I respond to what Jenny was saying about giving choices for people? I think that that's really valuable. And I would just add to that, when you're supporting someone after a suicide loss, there's a sense of disconnection from your body, right? Like all sense of safety has been obliterated. And, coming from my own personal experience anyway, feeling that whatever the people in my environment could do to help me feel more sense of safety, what that was for me. Of course, everyone's different, but I think that there is a commonality that we often feel a lack of safety around, like maybe it might be physical safety, it might just be emotionally unsafe, concerned about not just, but concerned about our own feelings of depression and related to what has just occurred, concern about our children. So all the like normal, I love like the suggestions around like laundry and food and how are you sleeping and how can I support you with that? So like basic needs being met, and just feeling like you're being held with all of that so that you can begin the process of processing everything that's just occurred. So I think like stepping in and being, if people want you there, to really be around them to really provide that and offer those options for people. Laundry, dishes, that kind of stuff is, I think, and just being close if they want that. Other times, maybe not, of course, but like that feeling of physical safety has been really rocked,
Mhm.
So
And
I
I
would,
think, sorry, Jenny, I didn't mean to cut
oh,
you off.
that's it, Dave. Go ahead.
That's just quickly. Sometimes we may have to be directive as well in terms of helping people with their needs. Like, I mean, sometimes, and depending on where they are in grief, they're not even thinking about eating, depending on where they are in grief. So I might go to my neighbor and say, hey, I'm going to the store, got to pick up a few things. What can I get for you? And then they think, hey, geez, I haven't eaten in a while. Can you pick up this, and this for me? So sometimes we have to kind of plant the suggestion of what we think they may need, so that triggers them to then begin to express that need.
I really like, Dave, how you phrase that as not a question of, do you want me to pick something up? Because it's sometimes hard for people to receive. Yep. And they feel like a burden. So when you phrase it the way you did was really good. Like, what can I get for you?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's still leaving that open answer. And for them to engage and stuff.
Right.
Like that.
But it's more of setting the sincerity of the question, the intention that you want to help them.
Yep.
That they feel maybe, oh, okay, you're asking what? I could use this.
And that's another way to create space as well too for for them to feel safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do feel that we could keep going with this topic, and we may have to do a part 2. And I would love to do that, but unfortunately, we are running out of time. So I want to give everybody a minute or so to tell people what you got going on and where can people find you. So to everyone who has tuned in and left comments, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you guys again. So as we close out, Cindy Ray, you want to tell people where they can find you?
I've got 2 websites. One is swflgriefrecovery.com. And the other one for opiate addiction is prescriptionsanonymous.com. You could reach me at cindy@swflgriefrecovery.com. Thank you.
All right. Jenny?
My website is griefcoach.com. You can find me on social media too. I also have a podcast, Share Your Story, exploring humanity one heart at a time.
D?
You can find me on Facebook at Adventures of Grief Girl, and also on Instagram. We have Grief After Dark, the podcast, and also The Pleasure Temple, the podcast, on Spotify.
Nice. Chad?
Okay. You can reach me on Facebook directly, Chad H. Nails. You can find me on all other major platforms, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Unveiled Coach. And you can actually reach me directly on my counseling line at 862-256-0614. I have not committed that to memory just yet. I'll get there.
Dave?
Yes, I can be reached at bootsyandangel@gmail.com. My personal, I have two websites. It's bootsyandangel.com, which were named after my transition daughter Janine's two favorite cats, who became my two favorite cats after she transitioned. You can also reach me at the psychologyprofessorandminister.com. That's a website that's dedicated to a book that I co-authored with Reverend Patty Farino, titled "When the Psychology Professor Met the Minister," about, in part, the spiritually transformative experience she guided that helped me find peace with my daughter Janine's passing 7 years after she transitioned, as well as how psychology and spirituality can integrate to help individuals transcend tragedy. You can also find me on Facebook under Dave Roberts, Instagram under Dave R3103. You can find me on LinkedIn. And my son has dubbed me the world's oldest millennial. And until anybody wants to take that title from me, they can. But so and I'm still looking for a T-shirt that says world's oldest millennial. So
We're gonna make it happen, Dave. We're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, we have to make it happen. So with that, it's been great sharing space with all of you and meeting some great new people with Cindy and Nancy and seeing some old friends again. It's been great. And Chad as well too. It's been great meeting you as well too.
Absolutely. Likewise.
Nancy?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Dave just said about everybody that's here and contributed. I've learned some things and certainly relate to those things. So it's been my honor to be here too. People can reach me at my website is Nancy Gordon Global, GLOBAL.com. My Instagram's at nancy.gordon.global. So that's pretty much the same. And I have a link tree, which is Nancy Gordon Global. And you'll find other links to podcast interviews I've been on. And I work with grief, loss and grief, both human and pet, though I specialize in pet loss. And guess that's it.
All right. Jenny.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My website is wildblossomcoaching.com, and you can also find me on all the social media outlets, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm on there as Jenny Baltazar Coach, and you can reach me directly. Send me an email, jenny@wildblossomcoaching.com. That's the best way.
Awesome. And I am Tony Lynch. I am your host. I am also the host of Memories of Us podcast, where we share inspiring stories of loss and grief. And let's see, you can also reach me on Facebook, Memories of Us, and you can look up my website, which is memoriesofus.org, to see all of the great services that we provide for men out there. And until next time, oh yes, just to keep everybody updated, we do have the Global Grief Conference coming up here in April. And there's going to be a virtual event, and everyone's invited to be there. We're going to have so many great things going on. And also be sure to stay tuned for our next episode, which is going to be another great conversation, including how do you grieve someone that you wanted dead? So we're definitely looking forward to some more great conversations. And until next time, you guys keep your head up. And if you're struggling, just remember the crisis line is 988. Reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member. Do not go through it alone. And you guys, we love you.
Yeah.
All right.
Indeed.
Bye, guys.
All right.
Yay.